It's been 30 years since the signing of the Oslo Accords, the agreement that had intended to set forth a path to peace between Israel and the Palestinians within a reasonable amount of time. But after 3 decades, its goal remains elusive. At a recent conference sponsored by conservative Israeli organizations IDSF and JCPA, participants suggested the agreement had more of a negative impact rather than achieving its goal of peace. Israeli parliamentarian Yuli Edelstein of the Likud governing party told the media line that in retrospect, the Oslo Accords was a mistake.
A terrible mistake made 30 years ago. Unfortunately, the expectations were very high. The reality turned out to be very different.
The Accords initially granted independence to the newly created Palestinian Authority in the cities of Gaza and Jericho in the West Bank.
From the very beginning, they started really building a military infrastructure, a terror military infrastructure. And instead of stopping it at the very beginning when it failed, Israel continued to enlarge this agreement, and it resulted with devastating attacks. Just to get the numbers, that from Oslo to today, 10 times more civilians were killed and hurt than the whole period from 1948 to Oslo. It changed completely the life in Israel.
Especially when the Second Intifada broke up. And even beforehand was the terrorism that preceded the Second Intifada. More and more Israelis became disillusioned. And I think it was the Second Intifada, the amount of Israelis that became disillusioned was the majority.
The agreement was signed in Washington by Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, the head of Palestine Liberation Organization Yasser Arafat, and American President Bill Clinton, who mediated the talks.
I was on the south lawn of the White House when it was signed. At the time, I was quite suspicious of Arafat because beforehand I used to be in charge of the Palestinian affairs in the Israeli intelligence.
I think that the biggest failure was really choosing to do business with a murderous terror organization like the PLO. We had local leadership here in the Palestinian towns in Judea and Samaria, but we chose to go to an organization that was founded in 1964, before the Six-Day War, in order to liberate Palestine, meaning basically annihilate Israel. When I heard the first speech Arafat gave in Gaza, I was shocked. We are talking about a peace agreement, and Arafat arrives while smuggling weapons and terrorists inside his car. And then he gives a speech full of hate, saying that with blood they are going to fight Israel. And I felt very uncomfortable. I felt something is really wrong.
In 2005, the Israeli government, under then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, decided to unilaterally withdraw from the Gaza Strip.
The terrible result was that coming with this idea that you can't make peace with the Palestinians, the result was the unilateral withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. We tried the good way, now let's try unilaterally. It didn't work out either because you can't run away from reality. And we are facing what we are facing right now.
The real mistake, they believe, lies in the signing of the Accords without the recognition of Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state.
30 years after Oslo, what we know of as those buses that exploded and the terror attacks that continued post-Oslo can be directly traced to the lack of acceptance of the State of Israel's right to exist, the lack of acceptance, including by the Palestinian Authority, then Yasser Arafat, who signed the Oslo Accords, and the lack of understanding of the international community and the Israeli stakeholders that you have to demand recognition in order to be able to negotiate and ultimately pave the path to peace.
In 2020, the unprecedented Abraham Accords were signed between Israel and leading Gulf nations that formerly were committed to not recognize Israel before the Palestinian issue is resolved.
What the Abraham Accords do is they shift the paradigm from the three no's of Khartoum, no to recognition of Israel, no to negotiation with Israel, no to peace with Israel, to the three yeses: yes to recognition, yes to negotiation, and yes to peace, in that order. It is impossible to make peace and then negotiate its terms and then see if we recognize each other's right to exist.
I think it's a game changer in terms of the Palestinian realization that they are not holding hostages anymore. They have to become practical, and if they want to negotiate, they have to realize that, they can want all kinds of things. They can get a different package.
The current situation in the Palestinian arena is unstable and rather uncertain. Many observers on both sides believe there can be no peace until a successor to aligning octogenarian Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is in place.
And there is no real prospect at the moment of any kind of peace, especially because Mahmoud Abbas is the same Abbas that was a terrorist long ago. He doesn't really want to be remembered as somebody who actually made peace. So we'll have to wait to the day after Abbas. There are many scenarios that day. Maybe the Palestinian Authority will fall. Maybe Hamas will try to take over. Maybe there will be chaos in the cities, and maybe the local leadership will emerge. We don't know what will happen, so we have to really prepare for all the different possibilities.
Fortunately, most of the names that are being mentioned are the ones who are even more leaning towards terrorism and towards the anti-Israel position than Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen himself. We have to make sure that next time we sign agreements, they would also be agreements to live with.
From Jerusalem, this is Debbie Monblad reporting for the Media Line.